Hello and welcome everyone to the next installment of the Portent webinar series. My name is Ariana and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. If you can just take a quick minute, let me know if the audio sounds good. That'd be great. You can just post the updated questions window. We are in what we have for what we have in store for you today is the 4 different GA goals you need to track with Tim Gillman, our analytics strategist here at Portent. We would love it if you would all join in on this webinar. There are a couple ways you can do that. You can ask questions within the GoToWebinar questions window, or you can tweet your questions to hashtag PortentU. That's hashtag PORTENT and the letter U. Lost my place. And just so you know, in case you miss out on any of today's webinar or want to review it later, don't worry, because you will receive a follow-up email which will contain the link to this recorded webinar, a SlideShare link to the presentation slides, and a bit.ly link bundle which will contain any links to the resources Tim will be referencing in his webinar today. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Tim. Hey, Tim.
Thank you, Ariana, and hello everyone. My name is Tim Gillman. I'm an analytics strategist here at Portent, and I want to welcome you to this webinar on goal tracking in Google Analytics, the 4 GA goals that everyone needs. So whether you own a site or work on a personal or company site, these tips will help you begin new goal tracking or at least enhance your current setup. And for more analytics resources and general commentary, you can follow me on Twitter at TimGillmanDrums. Yes, you guessed right, I'm also a drummer. And just a heads up, most of the time I do tweet about drumming or advanced baseball statistics, but occasionally I'll touch on some marketing. I've posted a bit.ly link bundle that contains resources cited in this presentation. This includes a custom report template and a dashboard focusing solely on goals and revenue, so you can feel free to use these materials in your own Google Analytics account. They say the best things in life are free, so I decided to comply. Today we'll be looking at what goals are, why they're important, goals you should have, and how to set them up. As you can see, I like to keep things simple. A lot of the focus today will be on goal setup, and if you have any questions about goal setup or other goal aspects, feel free to submit a question during this presentation. Now before we dive in, I want to touch on a couple of things. This webinar only covers goal tracking in Google Analytics, so Omniture and other analytics platforms will not be discussed. And one other heads up before we start, any goals that I walk through that require tracking link clicks or form submissions are based on auto event tracking with Google Tag Manager. So your site may not use this setup to track events, but setting up goals around button clicks is still possible and fairly similar. For the sake of time, I'm only going to show these button clicks based on this auto event tracking, but I've also placed a link in the bit.ly bundle if you're interested in more information on this option. Okay, so with that in mind, let's get started. If I were to ask you why you're here listening to me right now, I bet your answer would be something like this. You'd say, I have a website, or I work on a website, or maybe you're just here looking to learn more about analytics, which is pretty awesome. So ask yourself this question. What does my website do? Obviously your site serves some sort of purpose, but what exactly are you looking for from your site? If you're selling a product, your site is all about getting revenue. This is called an e-commerce site. If you want people to contact you about your services, your site generates leads. In marketing, we call this a lead generation or lead gen site. Maybe you acquire revenue, but also need leads for the sales process. An example here would be selling general car parts, but also receiving leads for custom-built car gear. According to my super complicated math formula shown here, that means your site strives for both revenue and leads. Our website here at Portent is a lead gen site that also has a handful of products and tools for sale, so we technically fall under this category. Now, not every site has to strive for one of these options. For example, a blog can simply be a resource where there's no contact from the users required. But the majority of businesses who are looking to advance their analytics knowledge generally fall into one of these categories. So back to the question, what does my website do? If you can't answer this question, that's a problem. You're essentially sailing on a boat with no compass, which can be fun, but probably not the wisest business practice. If you did answer this question, your answer is your number one goal, your big kahuna, the one goal to rule them all. So you want users on your site to complete that goal, which looks like this. Oh, look how happy they are to complete this goal you set up for them. When folks cross that hypothetical finish line, this is called a conversion, and there are two different types of conversions, micro and macro conversions. Macro conversions are the one big goal for your site. When I ask the question, what does your website do? What you answered with, that should be your macro conversion. And micro conversions are the small but important steps that could lead to a macro conversion. And I'm going to use Portent as an example here. Our macro conversion is when we receive a lead for our services, but we also track the smaller steps, such as social media shares, newsletter signups, or when someone downloads one of our tools and resources. When your site gets a macro conversion, your team's going to do a lot of this. And that's exactly what good business meetings look like in reality, as we all know. When I check in our analytics and see that we've received leads, that's how I celebrate. I whip out a giant trophy and hold it up in the air. So now if you work with a site that has no goal tracking, instead of epic parties, you're going to get a lot of this. No trophies, no high fives, just a bunch of, I don't know. So for those of you who are not tracking any current goals, I'm begging you, when you leave this webinar, begin tracking something, anything on your site. Track when a user spends more than a minute on your site, or when they read a blog post, just anything you can think of. Because when you investigate your site's performance, the last thing you want to see is this. I call this the flat line of doom. And what sort of analysis is anyone supposed to do with this information? Right, my thoughts exactly. Nobody wants to see that. So goals are important, but simply tracking them is half the battle. There are a few aspects of goals that will be helpful in your analysis besides just setting them up. The first is that goals help you set clear and quantifiable bars for success on your site. And as a mathematics nerd, the quantifiable part, that's just music to my ears. So for example, let's say you work at a lead generation site, and your director says, hey, I want more leads next month than last month. So your response would be, okay, that's cool, but how many more leads counts as a success? Is it 1 more? 1,000 more? With goals, you can easily compare how many leads you received month over month, quarter over quarter, whatever time interval fits your need. If they wanted 20% more leads, we can see that organic traffic here didn't quite have enough conversion for success, but direct traffic more than doubled the target. This is a great way to measure whether or not you're hitting the thresholds you want to reach as a company. And here's a quick pro tip. Never, ever compare goal completions by single days. For example, you never want to compare yesterday to the day before. You're going to drive yourself crazy, and that sample is just too small to derive any meaningful value. Personally, I don't even look at week over week unless I'm absolutely forced to go that route. Because date comparisons in Google Analytics, well, they're a lot like fine wine. The more time you give your data, the more volume and texture will show up in your analysis. You'll get a diverse and rich taste for exactly how your audience is acting on your website. See, this team of analysts, they know exactly what I'm talking about. But note that I do not condone drinking while analyzing. Another way goals are used in analysis is that they help determine the quality of your traffic. It's nice to watch your number of visitors and page views rise month over month, but if people aren't taking the actions that make your business successful, how beneficial is that traffic really? As you can see from Portent's data in October, while organic traffic still carried the load on goal conversions, social users were twice as likely to convert. This could be a useful guide when making decisions on what channels are the most effective and efficient for your business. If you invest wisely in these conversion channels, your team gets to do more of this. Yes, you gotta love that real human emotion. The group high five, that is fantastic. This is the exhilaration you can get with measuring goal completions. And one more way that goals are helpful in analysis has to do with seasonality. Some businesses may think they are immune to seasonality. For example, I came to Portent about a year ago, and I did not believe that things like weather, seasons, I didn't think that could have any effect on the industry. But actually, being immune to seasonality is quite rare, as the weather, holidays, and even things like technology releases can affect all kinds of different markets. For example, Here's data from a tech company that has very little seasonal promotion. But look at how in both 2012 and 2013, their transactions climb very high for the holiday season. Now in 2014, they can better promote themselves for this traffic that is ready to buy their products. Without the proper e-commerce tracking, this insight would not be possible in GA. Now that we've seen what goals are and why they're important, I'm going to walk you through the basics of implementing the 4 necessary goals for your site. There are 4 steps you need to take in setting up every goal. Set the goal up, verify that it will track, save the goal, and annotate new goals in your report. I don't know why I'm so obsessed with the number 4 today, but there are 4 steps for 4 goals. And note that occasionally the verification step will not apply. I'll explain that during these walkthroughs. So the first goal I'm going to show you is newsletter signups. I'm going to go through this with a lot of detail, and that way we can go pretty quickly through the rest of the goals. This is a micro conversion that focuses on retaining visitors. If a user signs up for your emails, they're clearly interested in your services and resources. This goal can be tracked in a couple of different ways, depending on your site setup. The first way is by destination page. When a user fills out the form to sign up, they're taken to a new page for confirmation. You can base the goal off that confirmation page. You don't want the conversion to take place on the page where they fill out the form. It needs to happen on the following page, as shown in this example. This is usually the easiest way to sign up goals. I'm going to show you how to build a goal based off of a similar confirmation page. First, if you go into your Google Analytics account, go to the top of the page and click on Admin. And then on the third column under View, you would click on Goals as pointed by the arrow. This will lead you to the Goal Settings page. And we'll be coming back to this page a few more times, so if you're following along with these walkthroughs, I'd recommend pinning this tab or making this page easy to come back to. This page shows the list of all of your goals, and Google Analytics allows you to track up to 20 goals. Today I'm going to show you 4. Now, if you reach this page and you see that there are absolutely no goals tracking, you're probably going to feel like this. Or maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but if that's your situation, take a deep breath, because I'm here to help you out. So, back to the goal screen. Click on the red New Goal button on the top left of the menu. For the first step, in newer GA accounts, they'll list a bunch of templates that you can model your goal after, but I'm not a fan of these templates as they typically just complicate what should be a quick process. If you see the screen, just select the custom bubble at the bottom, then click Next Step. Now give your goal a name. For this one, keep it simple like newsletter signup or mailing list. Since we're basing this example off of a destination page, you select a destination for the goal type. Then click Next Step. Now you'll need the URL for the confirmation page. For a destination goal, you'll only place the characters that come after your hostname. For example, if the confirmation page for Portent is portent.com/newsletter-signup, leave out the portent.com part and only add newsletter-signup surrounded by backslashes, basically what I've shown here in green. Make sure you keep the backslashes at the beginning and end of the string, otherwise the goal may not track properly. Once you've placed that URL string into the goals page, notice the box to the left that says equals to. This means the goal will activate when the user reaches a page matching exactly that URL string. In some cases, that can be problematic. Perhaps your site gives a unique string for each individual newsletter signup. If that's the case, a goal that needs to equal the entire string will not trigger, since only the first part of the URL obeys your command. This example URL would not count as a conversion, even though you totally deserve credit for one. Here's another pro tip. Change the settings so that the goal URL needs to only begin with that character string. Then any individual URL will also be counted as a conversion. That URL could contain anything after the first newsletter-signup, and it will count. So now click that box on the goal screen and select begins with instead of equals to, just to be on the safe side. Now your setup step is complete. You can also add a monetary value to the goal or a funnel if you wish, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into detail on monetary value and funnels. They can be very unique to each individual site and would require their own webinar. So now we need to verify this goal. Verification is a quick way to make sure your setup will track conversions. Click on Verify this goal towards the bottom of the page. Wait for a few seconds, and then Google Analytics will tell you how many conversions this would have yielded based on the past 7 days of traffic. So essentially, if your goal existed a week ago, here's the conversion rate over the last week of traffic. As long as it doesn't say 0%, at the very least you know the goal is tracking something. But bear in mind, if you're setting up a goal to work on a future promotion, it may not help to verify the goal since historical data would not work. And use common sense before saving your goal. For a newsletter signup, if this were to say the goal has a 50% conversion rate, your setup's probably off. Nobody has signups with a conversion rate that high, so 0.11%, that sounds about right. Now with your setup and verification done, now you click Create Goal. Now I know this may seem obvious, but I've seen evidence of people missing this last step and clicking the back button on the browser or clicking another button to leave the page, which would completely eliminate the goal that they built. So please do not make that mistake. And now there's one last step, it's annotation. Annotations are the equivalent of leaving a diary of your analytics actions. This is so anyone can see when there were changes made to the account setup, and adding a new goal, that certainly counts as a profound change. So why is annotation important? Let's say you're a new employee hired at a company in early 2014, and they ask you to take a look at goal performance in 2013 compared to 2012. If you go into the goals report and do a year-over-year comparison, you might see something like this. This is an epic improvement year over year, but look closely. There was a goal that obviously did not exist in 2012, but is now receiving credit. This is not proper analysis. You shouldn't simply add new goals to make your numbers look better. You need to identify when that change occurred to make sure that you point that out in your reports. You know what happens when my coworkers make changes in Portent account and don't annotate it? Yeah, I get very frustrated and I have to do aggressive things like write strongly phrased emails at everybody, but I know they're still intimidated. Luckily for Google Analytics users, annotations are super easy to find. You can add them from any report in Google Analytics. Simply click on this small arrow under a graph to open any annotations made in your current date range. From here, you can also add a new annotation, which we're going to do right now. Click the Create New Annotation button, then type in who you are and what action you took. So in this example, I say I'm in the Analytics department and I created a newsletter sign-up goal. The bad news with annotations is that they're very small on the interface and easy to forget, but do your best to stay on top of it whenever you do make changes. Click Save, and now you'll see your annotation on the graph as a very small talking bubble. I'll admit I find this very frustrating in Google Analytics. Those icons are so tiny, it's difficult to see when they take place, or really if they take place at all. But again, do your best to keep them up to date. The good news is that now you've got a goal for your visitors to run through. Give it a few days to start tracking the new email signups, then you can identify how many times your visitors ran through this awesome red tape. But before everyone listening gets started on setting up this goal, there is another way to track newsletter signups. Some websites have an email signup as just an event, and clicking the Sign Me Up button does not produce a confirmation URL. You cannot use the destination goal, since plenty of visitors will likely reach a page but not fully commit to a sign-up. And think about it from your perspective. If you go to a new site and you think, maybe I'll sign up for the newsletter, you actually reach the form and you think, maybe not. We don't want to count you as a conversion. The trick is to base the goal off of an event, which I'll show you how to do. But this is where things get a little tricky. In one window, you'll need to sign up for the newsletter, and in another window, you'll watch yourself go through the process in Google Analytics. First, find your site's email sign-up form, then in a separate window or tab in your browser, go to the real-time reports in GA, specifically the Events page. This can be found on the left menu under Real-Time, then Events. Now while you're on your site in another window, you sign up for your newsletter. The example here is for a contact form from our PPC Essentials page. The moment you hit that Sign Me Up button, go back to the GA Events report and watch your event show up on the real-time screen. The event category is Form Submit, and keep track of your category as you'll need it in a minute. And then you actually click on the category, which is Form Submit in this case, to get to the rest of the info you'll need for this goal. You'll need the event action, which is PPC-inquiry, and you'll need the label, which is a URL string. Keep track of the action and label name as well, so you have category, action, and label. Now we're going to head back to the goals page in your admin section to set up the goal. When you begin setting up this goal, now instead of using a destination, you want to select event. Instead of using the URL, now you can base the goal off of clicking that Sign Me Up button. This looks quite a bit different than the previous goal setup, but remember how I asked you to keep track of the event category, action, and label? Now you can see why. Input those values that I asked you to keep track of, and now you have your goal set up. This example isn't exactly a newsletter sign up, but it shows the general process of tracking a form submission. I input form submit, PPC inquiry, and the URL to complete my goal conditions. Remember to verify this goal and then create it. But before you pop open the champagne to celebrate your new goal, remember to annotate it. We want full transparency here. So with either a destination page or a click event, you're now tracking newsletter signups. I'm going to move on to another goal, and then we can take a look at how these micro conversions look in our reports. The next goal is for tracking resource downloads. It's a lot like a newsletter sign-up goal, as it shows how many users are interested in your site's content and tools. Examples of this goal would be a PDF download, or if someone clicked a button to watch a replay of this webinar. But for this demonstration, I'm just going to show you how to track all the PDF downloads on your site. Go back to the goals section of Google Analytics, create a new goal, and give it a title such as PDF downloads. And remember to set it up as an event like we did in the previous goal. If you remember how we went into that real-time report to watch a newsletter sign up take place, we're going to do the same thing here. You download a PDF, then check in the real-time reports in Google Analytics for the event category, action, and label. I know that a link click occurs whenever someone clicks on a link to reach a new page. Again, that's just Portent setup. Yours will probably be different. And that's what it looks like when someone downloads a PDF. For the goal setup, you set the category equal to what you find from the real-time report. And then for the action, click on the box and change that requirement from equals to regular expression. This way, when you set the PDF as the requirement, it will identify any action that contains the word PDF. Since we're capturing all PDF downloads, leave the label box blank. Verify the goal, as I did here, and then create it. But remember to annotate. Always annotate a new goal. Now, tracking PDF downloads helps you see how useful your visitors find your extra resources. For example, here's a snapshot of how our tools fared over the last month. To view this report, click on Conversion on the left menu, and then Goal URLs, as I've highlighted. To view just one goal at a time, which I recommend, you can click on the drop-down menu that I highlighted for Goal Option, then select your new goal that you created, or any goal you want to look at. So for Portent, now by the URLs, we can see which PDFs attract the most attention. This is a fantastic way to see what resources you should be promoting. Clearly, our PDF for the Unfun Parent has great awareness over this month. And speaking of awareness, I want to move on to our third and final micro conversion. And social media is the ultimate tool for building awareness, so tracking social media follows is another great way to look at how your company is trending. Most websites that have social media now have a bar towards the top or bottom with links for each social media platform: Facebook, Twitter, Google+, etc. I'm going to show you how to track conversions for whenever users click on one of these links. In this case, we're going with Facebook. Once again, this is based on the event of a button click, so you'll need that real-time report open and ready in Google Analytics. In your other window, you simply find the link to Facebook from your home page and click on it. So back to your real-time report, let's see what showed up for that event. Here, the site category is link click, but remember, yours will probably be different. You click on that category to grab the event action, just like before. This is actually pretty straightforward. The action is just facebook.com/portent.marketing. I'm guessing yours will also be that simple. Now head back to your goal page in the admin section and fill out the goal conditions just like before. You place the event category and action in the conditions, verify to be safe, and then create the goal. Social shares are best used over longer time intervals like quarter over quarter. It's a handy way to view your social presence and really shouldn't be checked on a micromanaging level. I suppose the only exception is if you make a big social push and want to check the immediate results. Other than that though, I would tend to look at this over the long term. So before we head to the final goal, you didn't think I'd forget, we need to annotate this goal. So if you set up a new goal for each social media follow, you can actually get quite a few conversions very quickly, so it's really best to let your team know that you added that goal on a specific day, otherwise they're going to wonder where all this high volume came from. So now we're going to head to the macro conversion, or as some would call it, the Mac Daddy of all conversions. And see your visitors here? They're ready to sprint into that goal conversion. You just need to set up the finish line. We're going to split this into two different macro conversions, the lead generation and the e-commerce transaction. I want to start with lead generation, since you'll see how they're very similar to the event goals we've recently walked through. As with any goals listed in this webinar, I'm providing a general template for you to reference, but not all setups will be identical. Some sites have lead generations through form submissions, while smaller businesses may simply have a link to an email address. Remember, be flexible in your setup, and if you ever get stuck, you can reach out to me for help. I'm going to show you this goal setup based on the form submissions we use here at Portent. As usual, have a window open to your real-time report to watch your form submission take place. Just like the other events, you keep track of the category, action, and label. You set up this macro goal as an event, and then input the category, action, and label that you already have. You know the rest of the steps. You verify, save, and annotate. This is the most valuable goal data to analyze for a lead gen site, and it should be done regularly, at least on a month-over-month basis. I've built a custom report that gives you the basics, and here's a snapshot of how your macro goal would look in this report. This is an easy and straightforward way to gauge how successful your site has been. I'm a big believer in sorting by channel, but if you use this custom report, by all means, customize it however you want. And now, for the other macro goal, this is for all the e-commerce sites out there. Tracking transactions and revenue is the name of the game for you. I've been slightly misleading in my webinar title, as technically transactions are not goals in Google Analytics. They're business goals, but not necessarily goals that you set up. You can build a goal around transactions if you want, but personally I wouldn't recommend it, because at that point you're essentially double counting transactions. When you analyze this data, transactions are similar to goal completions, and then obviously revenue is measured in some form of currency. Once again, due to the time constraints and unique nature of everyone's setup, I can only provide the very basic level to begin using e-commerce tracking. But if you're selling products on your site and receiving revenue, you absolutely must do this if you haven't already. Setting up e-commerce is a two-step process, where the first step can be complicated, and the second step is crazy easy. For the first step, you add a snippet of code to your order confirmation page. When a user submits their payment and completes the transaction, the data is captured by the code on the receipt page and then uploaded into Google Analytics. Typically, your developer should put in the code, as there are lots of things you can add or remove depending on what you want to see in your reporting. I've added a link to the bit.ly resource bundle where Google Developer Guides explains this code placement in a lot more detail. And now for the easy part. The second step, all you do is just click a button. I need to show you where that button's located. You go into the admin section of your account, then click on e-commerce settings under the view column. And now you see where to turn on e-commerce tracking. Just click the button so it says on, save your changes. While this is technically not a goal, you should absolutely place an annotation in your account mentioning that, hey, on this day we began revenue tracking. Otherwise, a new analyst might show up and be confused as to why you had zero revenue prior to that implementation. So congratulations, now you can keep track of all the revenue coming in from your site. You're going to look just as excited as these professional business people when you see revenue pouring in from your visitors. So in conclusion today, I just want to remind you of the process for implementing new goals in Google Analytics. Set up the goal, verify it can work, save the goal, and annotate that goal. Remember, you can track other goals on your site to enhance your analysis. Some examples are tracking visitors who spent a long amount of time on your site, tracking visitors who view a certain number of pages per their session. You can track whenever there are comments left on the blogs or other resources you have. You can even track when visitors create a new account with your site. I know that was a lot to digest in a rather short amount of time, but hopefully now you can see that using goals is an excellent way to set quantifiable bars of success for your site.
Thank you, Tim. That was great. So now don't forget that all the resources that Tim referenced in his webinar today will be available via bit.ly link bundle, which you can find. It's on one of the slides here, but it'll also be in the email follow-up as well. And make sure that bit.ly link bundles are case sensitive, so it is all lowercase. There's probably, I think GA's, anyways, yeah. It's in there. We're now opening it up for questions and answers. So does anybody have any questions? I know I have one question here. Hang on. Michael asks, so my boss really cares about page views. How do I convince him I should focus on these goals instead of page views?
It's a great question, as page views are a pretty common metric for people who are new to analytics. I would definitely point back where earlier I mentioned that getting a lot of traffic is nice, but if you could, in theory, have millions of page views that aren't accomplishing anything. And so on the one hand, that builds awareness for your site, but if you're trying to get revenue, page views cannot really equal revenue. You want the transaction set up, and tracking transactions and revenue. That's really more meaningful in the long run. So page views, they can be an important part of your reporting, but at the end of the day, you want to show either leads or the dollar signs, revenue. So just page views won't get you there. Using the goals gives you a very quantifiable way to demonstrate that information.
Awesome. So just remember, you can put your questions into the question window on GoToWebinar. It's on the bottom right, and you can also tweet us questions using hashtag PortentU. Let's see. Oops. Using the wrong mouse. Marjorie asks, when do we get the bundle? It'll either go out to, the email follow-up will either go out tomorrow to everybody or on Monday. We just have to get the playback all taken care of, so everyone will either have an email tomorrow or on Monday. And in that email will include also a link to the bit.ly link bundle and the SlideShare presentation. Pretty quiet out there. Anybody have, oh, there we go. Sammy asks, I don't think it's possible to set your fan page as a goal in Google Analytics.
Now, I'm not exactly sure what the specific reference to fan is, but if it's a page on your site where you have the Google Analytics code, and maybe
you're talking about Facebook.
Yeah, maybe the Facebook page. So you can't put the code, the destination. Like if someone lands on your Facebook page, no, you can't track because obviously you don't have Facebook's analytics. But you can track when they click the link to head to that page, which is really the same thing. As long as they hit that specific link, you know they're going to head directly to that page. So no, you can't track their behavior after that point, but you can at least demonstrate, hey, they're reaching our social media from our site.
That's correct, Sammy. Sammy says, I believe you can use event tracking to track visits to the fan page. Yes. You're welcome, Sammy. Ashley asks, is there a way to set a goal that tracks sequences of events, like someone signs up for a newsletter and then visits a pricing page?
Yes, so the sequence of events, that's really what a funnel is, and I didn't have the time to go into that during the presentation because everybody's funnel is going to be different, but in theory you could do that. You could set up the funnel so that they sign up for a newsletter and then visit a pricing page. There's also new things with Universal Analytics, which is the newest version of Google Analytics, where you can actually identify people by user ID. It's a pretty complicated process, but we do have a blog post about it that we could possibly add to the bundle. Yeah, we have a blog post that my teammate Michael Wiegand wrote about for setting up user IDs. That way you can track when someone does one action and then does another. But if, funnels are another resource that you can use just for when people do specific actions step by step. So I would say be on the lookout. We're probably going to do a blog post on that in the coming months, perhaps even a webinar just on funnels, because they are such a complicated process. But it is a possible thing to do.
Thanks, Ashley. Chris asks, this is a follow-up to Sammy's question. How do you consider people visiting your social media without hitting the link on your website? I know you can't track it, but is there a way to consider it?
Sorry, I'm having a tough time reading the question. So considering people visiting your social media site. Right, so that's where you have to get into like social media metrics and things like that. Again, Google Analytics doesn't give you access to tracking what goes on your Facebook page. One thing you can do though is sort of the reverse. You can find when people reach your website from social media. So let's say that you're on Twitter and you find out about a company on Twitter. If you click a link to reach the site, then you know that at least the traffic came to your site from social media, which is probably more important really in the long run. You want the users to get to your site probably more so than just your Facebook page. So you can just check the source and medium of where your traffic came from in Google Analytics reporting. And that's why I really like to focus on channels. So the custom report, it can tell you, hey, people came from social media, and that's how you know that your social media is being effective.
Awesome. We have some more time for questions, so if you have any, please feel free to share them in the GoToWebinar questions window. Do you have in your bundle, do you have any like learning more about GA resources or places people can?
I mean, yeah, I can. Yeah, in the bundle, there's the e-commerce tracking information. So there's that, because that's very important if you're selling products and don't have that set in place. And at the end, you'll need to talk to your developer in that process. And there's also the Google Tag Manager, just basic resources on why that could be a good option. All the events that I set up in these walkthroughs are based off of that. It's a little more complicated if you don't have auto event tracking. And the cool thing with Google Tag Manager is it's actually a free resource. So I would definitely check it out. It's in the bundle, and you can have it set up on your site pretty easily, and it makes setting up these goals just a lot easier.
Just give it a few more minutes for questions, and then if there's no other questions, we can give you all another 20 minutes back in your day, and we will send a follow-up email to everybody that attended. Okay, Dean asks, does Google offer more detailed training on this stuff?
Absolutely. So with Google Analytics, you can actually become a certified with Google Analytics. For example, I absolutely have to be certified for my job. Otherwise, people would question my standing as an analyst. So they've updated it since I went through there, and I can actually put this in the link, the bundle, the Bitly bundle. So they have I forget the name, but they have like a Google Analytics Academy of some sort, and there's all sorts of videos that walks you through they go very slowly through the basics. It's really ways to prep for the exam if you want to take it. And it's nice if you have someone at your company that's interested in taking that exam. It shows that you've learned a lot about this. Anyone can put it on their resume. It's nice to have Google say, hey, we think this person's smart enough to be certified. So absolutely, I can put a link into the homepage for where people look at these videos. You can view the videos just as text if you don't want to watch a video in itself, but they do have very step-by-step. I'm sure they have a whole section just on goal tracking and e-commerce.
Excellent. Okay, well, if there's no other questions, or you can't think of them right now, that's fine. You can always send a tweet to Tim at Tim Gillman Drums on Twitter, and just include Portent hashtag PortentU, and he will get back to you on Twitter as well. Excuse me. And just another, probably my 20th reminder, but it'll come in your follow-up email, slideshare presentation, Bitly bundle, the recorded webinar, everything will be coming to you in email. Our next webinar is not going to be until January 2015. Please come back and join us then. Everybody who registered for our webinars throughout the year will get a follow-up email in December with a link to all of our webinars. So everything for 2012, well, that was a while ago. 2014 will come to you in a follow-up email. We hope you enjoy the email. We hope to see you again in January. If you have any other questions, you can reach us on our website, portent.com, or facebook.com/portent.marketing. Hope you have a fantastic day, and we will host you again soon. Thanks.